So, what if the foundation of a thousand-year-old empire, an entire system of belief, was built on just a single disputed sentence? Well, back in the 16th century, a guy named John Calvin decided to pull on that exact thread. He went right after the ultimate authority in his world, the Pope. In this explainer, we're going to follow his argument step by step to see how he tried to deconstruct an entire empire of faith. I mean, for over 1,000 years, this one belief held an absolutely incredible amount of power. It shaped everything: kings, kingdoms, the daily lives of millions of people. And that belief was simple: that the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, had the final say over all of Christianity. And this idea, it has a name: papal primacy. Now, for reformers like John Calvin, this wasn't just some minor point of theology. Oh no, he called it the capstone of the whole structure. You know, that one piece at the very top of an arch that keeps the entire thing from collapsing? For him, this was the piece holding the whole system together. So naturally, Calvin asked a really dangerous question. Is that capstone, that critical piece, resting on solid rock? Or is it sitting on something a lot less stable? And that's exactly what we're going to dig into. We're going to follow Calvin's own logic and see just how he tried to take apart this massive central claim. Okay, first, let's really get a handle on the claim he was up against. The way Calvin laid it out, the argument was this: the Pope is the one single head that guarantees the church stays unified. Without him, without that one visible leader, the church would be, and this is a quote, a maimed and decapitated body. It's a really powerful image, right? The idea is that for true unity, you need one person in charge. So where does a claim that huge even come from? Well, the entire justification was built on the bedrock of Scripture. And Calvin knew that if he was going to challenge this, he had to go right to the source. He had to tackle one single, absolutely pivotal verse from the Gospel of Matthew. And here they are, the words that started it all. "Upon this rock I will build my church." For centuries, this one phrase was seen as the divine appointment of a human leader. But Calvin honed in on a critical question, a massive ambiguity at the heart of it all. What, or who, is the rock? So this really boils down to two completely different ways of reading that line. The traditional Roman position was that Peter, the man himself, is the rock. The foundation is a person. But Calvin totally disagreed. He argued that the rock wasn't the man, Peter, but the faith he had just professed, that incredible statement that Jesus is the Christ. For Calvin, the church is built on that powerful confession, not on one single flawed human being. But okay, you might be thinking, the verse doesn't stop at the rock part. Jesus also gives Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Now that sounds like some pretty special authority, right? Gotta be. Well, Calvin wasn't done yet. He took a close look at this part of the argument too. And his take on the keys is really interesting. He argues they're not some kind of tool for personal power or earthly rule. Nope. He saw them as a metaphor for the gospel itself. Think about it. When someone preaches the gospel, they're essentially unlocking the door to heaven for believers. And here's the kicker. Calvin points out that this same power, this ability to bind and loose, was later given to all the apostles, not just Peter. It was a shared job, not a unique authority. And to prove this wasn't some radical, new idea he just invented, Calvin dug back into the writings of the early church fathers, like Cyprian. And this quote he found really drives the point home. The keys were given to one man, Peter, to be a symbol of unity for everyone. It wasn't about setting up a chain of command. The real power, the real authority was given to all of them, equally. All right, so let's say, for the sake of argument, you buy Calvin's interpretation of the Bible. There's still a massive historical leap you have to make. How did this supposed authority get from Peter, the apostle, all the way to the Bishop of Rome hundreds of years later? This is where Calvin shifts gears, moving from theology to history, and takes a hard look at this claim of succession. So, the traditional story, the one passed down for centuries, was that Peter was the Bishop of Rome for a solid 25 years before he was martyred. Calvin knew this was the critical link in the whole chain connecting Peter to the papacy, and so he set out to see if he could break that link, using just logic and the Bible itself. So check out this timeline, which is based on how Calvin read the New Testament. He basically just does the math. We know from Paul's letters that Peter was still in Jerusalem for a long time after Christ's death, maybe around 20 years. We also know he died sometime during Nero's reign. Well, when you put those two facts together, a 25-year stint as bishop in Rome becomes, well, pretty much impossible.
Calvin argues that, at best, you've got maybe 17 years to cover his time in both Antioch and Rome. The numbers just don't add up.
And then Calvin points out another logical wrinkle. Okay, if the whole system of honor is based on following Peter, then you'd think Antioch, which was his first church, would be number 2 in line, right after Rome. But it wasn't. Alexandria, which was founded by Peter's disciple Mark, was actually ranked higher. For Calvin, this was a dead giveaway that the whole hierarchy wasn't some divine plan. It was something humans cooked up, based on things like politics and prestige.
Now, it's important to understand Calvin wasn't naive. He wasn't denying that the church in Rome was hugely important and respected in the early days. He totally got that. But instead of saying it was because of some divine mandate, he offered a much more practical, down-to-earth explanation for why Rome was so prestigious.
He basically boils it down to 3 things. First, its reputation. Everyone believed Peter founded it, so that gave it a lot of clout. Second, it was at the center of the Roman Empire. I mean, it had more resources, more smart people, more everything. And third, it was stable. While churches in the East were constantly getting into huge theological arguments, Rome was seen as this steady, reliable anchor. So for Calvin, these were all great reasons to respect Rome, to honor it, but they were not a justification for supreme rule. Okay, so if the Pope isn't the glue holding the church together, then what is? This is a huge question, and it brings us to Calvin's alternative vision, a completely different way of thinking about what unity in the church actually looks like. And this really gets us to the absolute heart of Calvin's entire argument. For him, it was simple. The church already has a head, a perfect, divine one, Christ himself. So to put a human substitute, a vicar, on earth wasn't just unnecessary. In his view, it was an offense to Christ's unique authority. You just can't have 2 heads leading one body. And this quote, again from Cyprian, just paints such a beautiful picture of this alternative vision. The idea is that the leadership, the whole body of bishops, is one thing, a single whole, and each bishop holds an equal piece of that whole. The analogy he uses is amazing. It's like the sun. There's one source of light, right? But its rays spread out and touch everything. Unity comes from that shared source, not from one single sunbeam trying to claim it's the entire sun. And this brings everything to a final, really provocative thought that goes way beyond the 16th century. Calvin's argument about the church raises a timeless question about how any large organization holds together. What's the true foundation of unity? Is it having a single powerful authority at the very top of a pyramid? Or is it a shared mission with leadership spread out, where everyone is bound together by a common set of principles? It's a question that's just as relevant today, far beyond the walls of any church.